How fitting. How very, very fitting. For those of you who were not here, which most of you were not here, I, this is my second go around with the Saturn the 12th video, literally tonight. I started a live stream Saturn the 12th and nobody showed up. I was like, all right, okay, cool. People are going to start tuning in later. 2 minutes passed, nobody appeared. 5 minutes passed, nobody appeared. I was like, okay, weird. Whatever, let me just go about my life, reading my little document, whatever. 10 minutes passed, nobody was here. 15-minute passed, nobody was here. I was like, what's going on? Apparently, the whole time, the live was disconnected. Oh, I had been reading for like almost 20 minutes. It's late and I'm tired, but I decided no, I'm just going to do this again. I'm just going to do this again. I hope that this time nothing happens, nothing goes wrong with the stream. Uh, okay. I see one living person in the chat. Thank you so much. And thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the compliment. Purnavasu and Jayashta. Unfortunately, those two nakshatras are not in my schedule. Not for this year. And honestly, probably not for next year either. Yeah, but I do have articles on them though on my Patreon. All right, guys, I've missed you guys. I have missed being here with you guys. It's been a month since I've done a live stream, but here we go. Look, I was like at page 3. So sad. Anyway, Saturn in the 12th house. So, to begin with, Saturn in the 12th house could literally minimize sleep. If it is badly placed, one may suffer from too much anxiety, perhaps even nightmares and sleep paralysis. But even when well placed, one may be very disinclined towards sleeping and resting. One would always wish to be on the move. One would not enjoy indulging in rest. One would overwork oneself and always keep oneself busy. One may drink many energy drinks or be addicted to coffee. For this reason, this can still cause some degree of anxiety, the sort of anxiety that is seemingly hard to heal. Because to rest is in and of itself healing to the constitution, and so by denying oneself this, one can create other issues. Besides an odd fear of rest and relaxation, which can lead to anxiety, one can also have a fear of indulging. One may struggle to allow oneself to have fun, to play, to eat junk food, to have ice cream or candy, to have sex regularly. There is this odd compulsion to never allow oneself too much freedom, and to never allow oneself to enjoy oneself too much, as though there was this underlying awareness that self-destruction is not far from those who indulge. Now, there are various positions that can create a hypochondriac, a health freak, a beauty and appearance obsessed individual, and Saturn in the 12th is one of those positions. The 12th is less a house of dramatic death, like the 7th house. Instead, it is more appropriately the house of decay, the house of wasting away. And so Saturn, the planet of limitations, would be interested in stopping the inevitable process of decay. Being a naturally anxious planet that seeks to minimize and deny the significations of its placements, here it may have a fear of dying, a fear of aging, and for this reason may be inclined to being a health freak, constantly worried about falling sick from one thing or the other, refusing to eat this or that because of the supposed health consequences, endlessly researching the ingredients of different food products, being excessively clean, working out excessively for hours on end, curious about the latest healthy thing to do, etc. And ironically, it is this neurotic obsession with health, wellness, and stopping death that ends up causing them health issues. How curious that many of these elements are classical sixth house behaviors. a concern over health, a hypochondriac. Recall that sometimes Saturn can so deny the significations of one house that it can call upon its opposite's qualities. For this reason, however, the Saturn in 12th native, if it is well placed, can actually be one of the most fit, most healthy, and most physically strong, physically attractive people around because they do not let themselves become idle or indulgent and are always very disciplined. All right, let's check the chat for a little bit. What about the Nishta? I think. Oh wow, what we're already almost in the middle of the year, man. If we're already in the middle of the year, I have that video, I have that other video, I have that other video, I have that other video. If I do the niche, it's probably going to be next year. Thank you. A lot of people really like that Rohini video. Thank you so much, DB Tat. I'm sorry, DB Dat Taurus. All right, okay. So going back, the 12th house is the natural house of, or rather, it is one of the natural houses of indulgences. The 12th and the second are two houses of indulgences. The 12th house is the natural house of indulgences, where we literally waste away because we give ourselves over to pleasure and indulgence. But Saturn here would curb this tendency greatly, making it so that the native never allows himself to truly give himself to pleasure or vice out of fear of self destruction. Interestingly, Saturn in the 12th also aspects the second house, which is another house of pleasure and indulgences. And actually, this further represents Saturn here as a placement that causes depression. Pleasure is one of the purposes of the material plane. And so, someone who stops themselves from enjoying things, or rather, someone who does not possess the capacity for enjoying the material plane, will quickly lose interest in the material, becoming depressed, and at its worst, might even contemplate ending their own life. Saturn in the second, or aspect in the second, is a placement that can create such ideations in the minds of the native. And actually, Saturn in the second house, more specifically, can also create a spiritual person because obviously, if you're not interested in material pleasures and in the material world, guess what? You're going to be more inclined towards the metaphysical, the spiritual. Another means of expressing concerns over death and decay, or rather, another way one may seek to stop the process of decay, is actually by giving into philosophies of spirituality that promise an afterlife, because then one's anxieties related to death and decay are also calmed down. Saturn in 12th, this is likely someone who does not like to spend hours daydreaming and actually hates to be idle again. They always need to do something, be somewhere, interact with others. They don't like their minds to be still nor to wander out of their control. They may even dislike being in meditative states, actually, because to them, it almost feels as though they are dying. And remember, they're trying to run away from this sentiment, from this feeling. And they strongly dislike that feeling, which is one of the reasons they may not only struggle with spirituality in general, but they again may wake up in the middle of the night because when we sleep, we sink into a deeper and deeper levels of unconsciousness, which is a state similar to death. And for this reason, they may suddenly wake up because they don't like to be in that state. It scares them. In general, sleeping may be quite difficult and they may avoid this state. This is one of the many reasons why, again, their anxiety can be very hard to correct because they avoid the sort of mental states that usually serve as a solution to anxiety. They may even suffer from a lot of sleep paralysis because during that natural process that the consciousness disconnects from the body, out of pure fear, they may stop that process and then be trapped in a state like limbo. Such a placement suggests that one is good at putting at bay negatives. Actually, no. Before we go into this, let's just go to the chat. Oh, wow. But wait, I don't think his birth chart is AA, Vladimir Putin, or is it? We'll check Vladimir Putin's chart later on. Whew. All right, all right. Where are we? Okay. So the 12th house is also a house that is related to the spiritual world, spirits, stuff like that, right? So let's move on. Such a placement suggests that one is so good at putting at bay negative spirits, negative entities, and hidden enemies that they never disrupt your day to day life. Once again, Saturn is a limiter. It limits things, it denies things, it minimizes things, controls things. And so, since the 12th house is where many of us are attacked by negative entities, if Saturn is well placed, Saturn can literally block and minimize those attacks. So, let's move on. You likely live a stable material life because some way, somehow, you crush and dominate over all entities that seek to disrupt you. You are the least likely to suffer from curses, witchcraft, and demonic possession or subconscious influences. This position then can add to a lot of mental and financial and overall material stability. The 12th house is the collective unconscious. It is also where we all participate in astrally influencing one another. The negative emotions, the evil eyes, which is essentially jealousy raised to the level of witchcraft, the blessings and the curses of others, these literally affect us. But if one has Saturn in the 12th, one is literally less sensitive to the auras of others, the emotions of others, and indeed less sensitive also to both their blessings and curses. So let us go on a little bit of a tangent and speak a little bit about how people are cursed. One of the ways that people are cursed, to better understand how Saturn can make one unaffected by curses. In order for a spirit, either positive or negative, to enter into your life, you literally have to be compatible with it. A body is like a house, a temple, an altar. Spirits relate to temples as grooms relate to brides. Why? Because the material world is said to be the bride of the spiritual. And so you literally can only marry yourself to spirits that are compatible with you as a material bride. And so spirits are naturally attracted to material vessels that are compatible to them. It is said that the spirit of industriousness, for example, is compatible with the spirit of wealth, the spirit of laziness with that of poverty. With each action, with each habit, we build the temple that is our body and our life, making it compatible with this or that entity. There is a relationship, for example, between someone who's physically weak and also spiritually vulnerable to attacks, as the body is related to the spirits. There's a relationship also between mental weakness and also spiritual vulnerability. The greatness of Saturn is, because this is a planet that is always trying to overcome itself, Saturn is always trying to overcome itself, trying to dominate itself, trying to inspect itself for flaws and correct itself. It is less susceptible to being taken over by evil entities because it does not create the space for them to enter. One of the ways in which Saturn blocks the entrance of these entities is by keeping a clean house, going to the gym, not lying, keeping its promises, practicing humility, and in general maintaining good habits. Remember, the temple of one's life and the vessel of one's body are built and maintained by habits. And depending on the vessel you possess, you will be compatible with certain types of spirits. Let us speak of being cursed. Oof. I am talking a lot. I do hope you guys are keeping up, and I do hope I am not boring you guys. But anyway, let us speak of being cursed. Different people are susceptible to different types of curses because different people possess different weaknesses. All right then. So, for example, if someone is already a lustful person, cursing that person with the end of their marriage is easy because you can provoke him into cheating. If someone already suffers from anger management issues, cursing her with the loss of her job is easy because you can provoke her into berating her superiors, for example. If someone already suffers from a lot of anxiety, cursing them with the loss of their life is possible because you can provoke him or her into reacting foolishly to routine maneuvers when they're driving. If someone already suffers from a desperation for love, cursing them with humiliation is easy because you can goad them into embarrassing themselves before their crush. All right, I hope you guys are keeping up with what I'm trying to say. The basic ideas here is that cursing and blessings as well, because to bless is the other side of the coin. Cursings are not random. People can't just randomly curse you, you know what I mean? If you're not compatible with certain curses, if you're not compatible with certain negative spirits, some witch, some warlock, some evil person, some enemy, they can sweat themselves. They can recite mantras of 12 hours and it will never affect you. You know what I mean? They could pay people to perform rituals over the course of weeks, lighting candles over your name. But if the spirit that they're launching at you, if the curses that are launching at you are not compatible with you, it will have no effect. But if somebody knows your weakness, let's say it's anger, let's say it's anxiety, let's say it's lust. If they know your weakness, they can craft their rituals, they can craft their witchcraft in such a way that, yes, it can make you fall. So it's not random, you see. Let's say somebody has a good marriage. Let's say two people in a marriage, they're very good at communicating with one another. They're very good at being patient with one another. They're very good at really considering one another. Let's say they're sexually loyal. Let's say they're faithful. Let's say they're not very sexually perverse. Cursing those two people, cursing that marriage when they enter their marriage, is going to be very, very difficult. You might tell yourself, oh, I know what to do. I'm going to curse the husband so that the husband can cheat on the wife. But if the husband is already somebody who's sexually disciplined, if the husband is already somebody who, yes, is lacking in sexual perversion, it's very difficult for you to curse him with cheating on his wife because his body, through his behavior, through his habits, his body, his life is not the compatible temple to whatever spirit of infidelity you're launching at him. Am I making some sense? For those of you who are New Agers and really enjoy New Age language, I don't know. I don't really understand New Age language very much. Maybe the whole language of frequencies, not being of the same vibration or something like that. I don't know. That's not the kind of language that I use. I personally am not a big fan of New Age language, although I do appreciate it. But in any case. And so why am I talking about cursing here? Why am I talking about cursing? Because the basic idea is this. One of the reasons why Saturn in the 12th, and Saturn as a planet in general, is not very easy to curse is because Saturn is a kind of planet that it is always inspecting itself for its own flaws and is always dedicating itself to overcoming its own flaws, overcoming its own tendencies. And so if Saturn is suffering from anger or lust, sure, one's enemies can take advantage of that and, yes, take advantage of that. But you as a Saturnian person, you're going to be less inclined to blaming your enemies for exploiting your flaws. And you're going to blame yourself for having those flaws to begin with. And you're going to correct yourself and overcome yourself. And guess what? When you do that, guess what? You're no longer susceptible to being cursed. You're no longer susceptible to witchcraft. It's very interesting how Saturn is. Saturn can start off as one of the most susceptible to witchcraft, but then Saturn is ultimately the planet that is the least susceptible to being overcome or overwhelmed by anything. It's the least susceptible to being physically overcome. It's the least susceptible, yes, also to being spiritually overcome because it rids itself of every single one of its flaws. And so Saturn is the ultimate planet that can really protect you in that regard. Let's check the chat. To a lesser extent, it applies to the D9. Oh, really? Oh, that's great. Which planet I'm going to discuss next? Mars, because people voted for Mars. Hi, Ezra. So nice to see you here. I don't know who Ataturk is, but okay. Okay. Actually, I don't really understand retrogrades very much. I've never really stopped to really study retrogrades, and so I can't really say. The only thing that I can tell you is that usually what astrologers say is that when a planet is retrograde, its effects are stronger. So I guess that might mean that a retrograde Saturn is everything that I've said, but more intensely. But I've never really properly studied retrograde, so I really can't say. Oh, do you have Saturn in the 12th Unicorn 8? Hi, welcome to your first live. Saturn in Scorpio, depending on where Mars is sitting, Saturn in Scorpio is badly placed. Saturn in Scorpio can either be either badly placed or neutral, basically. Oh, very interesting. Pardon me for not being very cultured. The founder of the Republic of Turkey. Are you Turkish, Ezra? Degree theory. That I think that's a very tropical thing. Listen, we deal with Buddhas and nakshatras, so I mean, I don't know. Isn't that our degree theory? And there's also like the Gemini concept of Atmakar of Charakarkas. So yeah. Oh, how very interesting then. Oh, really enjoy having you guys here. All right then, let us move on. Okay, so here I'm just going to be repeating the things that I was saying. Curses aren't random. One cannot just randomly perform a ritual against another, a prayer against another, or recite incantations against another and expect them to work. Even in magic, there is a method to the madness. There is order and logic. Once again, we are seeing how Saturn can protect one from being cursed because if Saturn is suffering from anger management issues, for instance, it will identify this negative behavior within itself, not blame other people for it, not blame other people for its shortcomings, dedicate itself to self improvement, and that way he is no longer vulnerable to the evil spirits that are compatible with rage. If Saturn is struggling with lust, ooh, my mouse, laziness, or any other flaw, it will again inspect itself and correct itself, and in so doing, it makes itself less susceptible to being cursed. Right. Again, one's life is a ritual that summons in different forces. For a ritual is almost like a daily habit, daily and weekly patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking that attract and repulse different forces. So, this is the way that Saturn in the 12th house can protect one from curses and evil spirits. There you go. Now, the 12th house is also where a planet destroys itself or wastes away through giving itself over completely to its significations. Essentially, this is the house where the qualities of a planet are exaggerated to the point of self destruction. So, Saturn in the 12th could make one depressed without a good reason for being depressed, as Saturn is the Karaka of depression. It can make one pessimistic also without reason, as Saturn is the Karaka of pessimism. You could literally be the type of person to needlessly dwell on the most negative, saddening, traumatizing, pathetic, or humiliating aspects of your own existence. And these contemplations literally add nothing to your life, and yet you do them anyways. In the 12th, planets go about their significations to the point of futility. They exaggerate their behavior to the point where it is literally self destructive and without purpose. For instance, with Saturn in the 12th, one can be disciplined beyond what is reasonably expected or necessary, like pushing oneself to the death at the gym, or training oneself to go on very little sleep, or fasting for many days. One suffers from an odd compulsion to make oneself one's own slave. One may be perfectionistic to the point of futility and self-destruction as well. Others may see one as needlessly nitpicky, constantly trying to find errors where none exist, throwing a fit over the most unnoticeable flaws. Because Saturn in the 12th also aspects the second, one may be perpetually dissatisfied with one's own appearance. This could do one of two things. Either one may be excessively vain, constantly looking at oneself in the mirror, constantly grooming, preening, plucking, buying expensive skincare products and hair products, even getting plastic surgery, but still never arriving at a place of satisfaction. Or one could find oneself so physically repulsive, one gives up on grooming altogether, which of course results in an even uglier appearance. One may be overly self-critical, again, beyond that which is practically beneficial, and actually the critiques may not even be fully based on reality. Because there is nothing logical or practical that binds this energy, it operates to a ridiculous extreme and has no limitations. Saturn in every house is bound to the practical realities of that house, being disciplined insofar as it benefits the finances in the second house, being clean insofar as it benefits the messiness of the second house, being self-critical insofar as it benefits the body in the first house, etc. But in the house without boundaries, in the house without restrictions, Saturn gives itself over to all of its qualities to such an exaggerated degree that it can even become detrimental to the native his or herself. In any other house, a planet naturally limits itself in order to accomplish the goals of that particular house. But in the 12th, there is no goal, but just existence, not tied to anything tangible. All right, checking the chat again. Spot on so far about everything. Hi, Abeb Jorgman. Who knows too many things? You know too many things, you must change. I don't know if you're talking about me or you're talking about something else. Yes, definitely. Saturn conjunct 12th Lord Mercury in the 8th house. Interesting. Okay. This part, me as YouTube, this is so interesting because later on in the document, we're going to be talking about this specific expression. So that's very interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, Saturn the 12th individuals have a lot of such compulsions. Hi Lola, yes, doing the Mars series next, like we agreed that other time. I'm almost finished with the Mars in the first Word documents. Don't know when I'm gonna start it. All right, moving on. So, the second house is a house of perception, but specifically it rules over the right eye, which is related to perceiving visible things. The 12th house is also a house of perception because it relates to perceiving invisible things, as the 12th house rules over the left eye. So, generally speaking, in spirituality and in mysticism, the right eye is related to the physical world, the left eye is related to the astral worlds. And so, The 12th house ruling over the left eye basically says that it sees everything that is invisible. And so, in other words, it's about intuition, right? And so, naturally, the 12th house is the main house of intuition. Clairaudience, clairvoyance, seeing auras, seeing spirits, communicating with spirits, etc., etc. But we know that Saturn is the limiter. And we also know that Saturn is a planet of ignorance. What this usually means is that the native with Saturn in the 12th house will not be intuitive or will not have a sensitivity to such experiences. Or it can mean that the native will be extremely suspicious of intuition and intuitive ability, believing such things to be fake and a farce, applying too much logic to such subjects, and for this reason can ignore one's own intuition and not seek to cultivate it. It could also mean that the native is literally afraid of spiritual subjects, ghosts and spirits and intuitive activity, as Saturn is also a planet of fear, and so where it's placed, it can also create a lot of fear. But what we also know of Saturn is that it is a planet that can improve with time if one puts in the effort. Though Saturn here can start off the least intuitive, through careful study of mystical subjects, through meditation, fasting, and really trial and error, and making a science out of spirituality. I say science because Saturn is a planet of experimentation as it relates to studying how things operate in the tangible plane. Saturn could develop very strong and very reliable and very accurate intuition. In fact, the intuition of Saturn in the 12th house can end up being the most accurate out of any other planet. You know, other planets, when they have, actually, you know what? Let me not go off the document because I even wrote about this here. Why do I emphasize accuracy? See, many people are very intuitive, but at the same time are very inclined towards delusion. This is because many intuitive people do not know how to properly filter what is true from what is emotional or what is projection, etc. They have incredible insights, but it is often mixed in with a lot of falsity. But the great thing about Saturn is that Saturn is not inclined to this sort of behavior. But Saturn is the refiner, the perfecter. And so here in the 12th house, Saturn would always run experiments with its intuition. And through running experiments, it will refine its intuition so that it becomes more accurate. For every impression, it would actively seek to verify if it is true or not. That way, through careful trial and error, it perfects its intuition. Saturn here would test every spirit's, every voice, every sound, everything that it sees to see if it is worthy, to see if it is a worthy spirit, or just a corrupt and wandering entity. You know, this is different from like Jupiter in the 12th house, for example, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Jupiter in the 12th house people are much more intuitive than Saturn in the 12th house people. But the thing about Jupiter in the 12th house people is that their intuition is also mixed with delusion. Their intuition is also mixed with a lot of things that are false. So Jupiter in the 12th is more intuitive. They get more messages. They can hear more spirits, but they're more inclined to being deceived by the things that they hear and they see. Saturn in the 12th is less intuitive, is much more doubtful of the things that it sees and hears, but over time, through trial and error and experimentation, its intuition becomes so accurate, so perfected, that every single time the Saturn in the 12th house person gets an intuitive message, they know that it's right. And they're very good at filtering, and they're very good at telling, okay, this isn't true, this is true, you know what I mean? And so Saturn in the 12th house tarot readers, Saturn in the 12th house astrologers, Saturn in the 12th house psychics, over time, they can end up being the most reliable of them all. The most reliable of them all, because they see things that are clear, they see things that are true, they see things that are detailed, and they are rarely ever wrong. You know? And so it's very interesting. We're seeing this transition, as we always see this transition with planets and with Saturn. Saturn going from being completely dubious, completely resistant to these intuitive subjects, to eventually getting involved with these intuitive subjects and being the most accurate with these intuitive subjects because they apply science to them. Uh, and so, though Saturn in 12 starts off the least intuitive and the most suspicious of all intuitive activity, over time it makes a science out of intuition. Let me even make this bold. Science out of intuition. And when it does this, more than any other planet, its predictions tend to be the most accurate and the most precise because Saturn's refining and perfecting quality would take care to remove every falsity, every delusion, every projection, so that the messages received are perfectly clear. All right, let's go. Let's see. No, I've never heard anywhere that says the first house is third eye. Can some of this apply to Saturn in Pisces? Uh, I don't think so. Which book or which article? You mean the one that I'm reading? You don't need to buy it. I'm already reading it. Ah, yes, absolutely, Ezra. Moon people are very much inclined to have intuition mixed with emotions. Very inclined. Oh, that's very unfortunate. Do I have a favorite Saturn placement, house placement? No, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. Oh, that's beautiful. So my sun is in the eighth in Pusha, so well, obviously that's just one position, so you can't really tell an entire career just on one placement. But that usually suggests somebody who can, yeah, be quite good in such professions. Thank you. All right, let us go back. We've been here for almost 40 minutes. Okay. The 12th house also relates to the collective unconscious or the astral environment in which we exist with other people around us, our family, friends, neighbors, classmates, coworkers, etc. And actually, this is a house of hidden influences because those who practice magic and witchcraft gain a hidden influence over their environment through manipulating the astral plane, through whispering into the collective soul and maneuvering it at will. But since Saturn blocks and denies, what this suggests is that the native exists outside the reach of witches and warlocks. Which basically, what I'm saying is that in the astral, that's where we all tend to influence one another. But somebody who has Saturn in the 12th here is naturally less influenced by people, in the astral. If Saturn is well placed, one again is not only not easily cursed or otherwise influenced subconsciously, one is likely to somehow gain an awareness of when they are around a spellcaster and then intuitively block themselves from being influenced by them. Again, one may instinctively wake up in the middle of the night because one somehow can sense a presence. But what could also end up happening is eventually the Saturn the 12th individual may dominate and enslave their collective through hidden underground means, whether spiritual or other underhanded means. Now, if Saturn is badly placed, one can be extremely susceptible to psychic attacks, evil spirits, and witchcraft. because Saturn oppresses us, and where it is placed, it could be enslaving us under those significations. But again, as Saturn is a natural planet of opposites, and through labor, one can eventually become the one oppressing and enslaving all entities in one's astral environments. So, in childhood, one could suffer from nightmares, strange accidents, and overall be thrown about by astral entities. But as one gets older, develops self discipline, becomes less shaken by the 12th house matters, one can eventually become the one controlling the astral. Though Saturn here can create an ignorance and aversion of 12th house matters, eventually, through time and effort, one can become a master of the astral, meditating for hours, praying for hours, fasting constantly, determined to no longer be controlled by evil entities. In the beginning, this placement can make someone avoid being reclusive, avoid meditative states, avoid literally being by themselves, avoid daydreaming. But eventually, as they begin to suffer more and more from neglecting the spiritual side of life, they may decide to heavily invest in this area, and through a lot of trial and error, they may succeed. Oh, actually, that's another thing that I forgot to say. See, let's talk a little bit about people who daydream. Right? Here's the thing about our imagination. Our imagination can be two things. Our imagination can either be a plane of projection where we're seeing a lot of things that are false, that were coming up, but literally it is through the mind's eye. It is through the imagination that we also see spirits. It is through the imagination that we also have visions. Here's the horrible, horrible, horrible things about people who are chronic daydreamers. People who are chronic daydreamers, they don't realize it, but they're seeing spirits all the time. They are seeing spirits all the time. They're having visions about the future and things like that. But the problem is because they're always daydreaming, they can never tell whether they're having visions or whether they're making things up in their mind all the time. You want to know what the awesome thing is about not being a daydreamer? You want to know what the awesome thing is about not being a daydreamer? When you do see things in your mind's eye, you know that you're not making shit up. Please, excuse me for cursing. I think this is the first time I've cursed in this channel. When you do see things in your mind's eye, you know you're not making things up. You know, aha, that is an entity. Aha, I just had a vision about the future. Aha, I just had a vision about what it is that my girlfriend is doing at work. Don't know where that came from. But yes, so let me write something down here. Since Saturn in the 12th house, actually, all of a sudden I had this wave of laziness and I don't feel like writing this down, but I'll write this down anyway. Actually, let me start this paragraph differently. The evils of daydreaming is even the daydreamer sees spirits, has visions of the future, and overall gets intuitive messages. But since the daydreamer is always daydreaming, they literally struggle to tell the difference between actual messages they are receiving from their own projections. The benefit of Saturn in the 12th is that since it overall limits imagination, when one does see things through one's mind's eye, one knows that it is not something one is making up. So one can see spirits and know that it is a spirit one is seeing. not an illusion. When one has visions, one knows that it is an actual vision, not something one dreamt up. So yeah, actually, you guys, one thing that we find when you read like spiritual books, like magical books, that are trying to train you into becoming a good magician, you want to know one thing that they often say? They tell you, stop daydreaming. Stop daydreaming. Stop daydreaming. Daydreaming is not good. Stop daydreaming. They actually say that. They actually say that. All right, then. Let us go back here. Let's see what's going on. Which 12th house placement would be most susceptible to being affected by black magic or curses? Jupiter there, Rahu there. Rahu really is very susceptible to that kind of stuff. In general, badly placed planets, but Jupiter, Rahu, what else? Off the top of my mind, that's the only thing that I can think of right now. Okay. Sorry to hear that. Yes, absolutely. Many planets in the 12th house, actually, specifically, the sun in the 12th house can land you in prison. But you want to know something great about Saturn in the 12th? If you have Saturn in the 12th, you're probably never going to go to jail. You're probably never going to get run into like the police or anything like that. You are definitely less likely to be imprisoned. I wish I could like this comment, but there's no way of doing that apparently. Oh, thank you. Apparently it has. All right, guys, we're at the end of our document. Do you guys have any questions or anything like that? You don't even have to ask questions about Saturn in the 12th house. You can just ask questions about Saturn through the houses or whatever comments you guys have about Saturn. Since we're basically at the end of the series, like, please, I'd be happy to hear any general questions you guys have about Saturn. And let's see if I'm capable of answering any question. Why would it mean less likely to go to prison? Because you're quite literally limiting those significations. So here's something about the 12th house. Let me pull up my notepad. One of the significations of the 12th house is freedom. But here's the thing about freedom. When you are too free, when you allow yourself to be too free, what happens? You could literally end up in jail. When you're too free, when you don't listen to people, when you don't follow the rules, when you're constantly breaking the rules, guess what? You land in prison. It's one of the reasons why the sun in the 12th house, usually when you're going through a sun dasha and you have sun in the 12th house, or you're going through the dasha of a planet and 12th from that planet is sun in the 12th house, chances are you're going to end up in jail. Because here's the thing about the sun. The sun is a planet of complete freedom. The sun is a planet of so much freedom that you literally don't care to follow the rules. That is what happens to many solar people. They are so free that they don't care to follow the rules, and then guess what? They get in trouble. They get in trouble with society, and they get in trouble with the law. And so when you mix the sun, a planet of pure freedom, with the 12th house, which is a house of pure freedom, all that freedom can land you in jail. Because you never limit yourself, you never limit your behavior, and then you could literally end up in jail. And also, did you know that one of the significations of the sun is also prison? Where is my Andrew Mason astrology book? Art of Vedic. I love this astrology. I love many astrology books. I love many astrology books. Guys, check out what I'm reading right now. I'm reading the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. I'm still reading this as well, the Vegan Bhairava, um, the Shiva Sutras. Honestly, I read multiple things at the same time sometimes. Anyway, but yeah, let me pull up my Andrew Mason. You guys should really get this book. You should buy it. You should download it. I got the digital copy, but I love this book so much that I think I'm quite literally going to buy the physical copy as well. It's by Andrew Mason. So let me go to the sun. The sun. Where are you, sun? Where are you, sun? Primary karakas of the sun. Where are you? These are the karakas of the sun, the father, prana, kings, etc. Where are you? Where are you? Let me read. Check this out. One of the karakas of the sun is literally prisons. Prisons are literally one of the karakas of the sun. And then you're asking yourself, okay, that doesn't make sense. If the sun is a planet of freedom, so why is one of its karakas prisons? But that's precisely it. The sun is so free that it's constantly breaking the rules. And because it's breaking the rules, people are going to put you in jail. And so if you have Sun in the 12th house, the Sun in the 12th can land you in jail. But if you have Saturn in the 12th house, because Saturn is limiting itself, it's not going to break the rules. It's not going to break the rules. Sun in the 12th house can also make somebody more susceptible to black magic than Saturn. I'm very sorry to hear this. Saturn and Ardra would definitely block some of the hypercritical aspects of Ardra. It would refine those qualities as well. Saturn, when it enters into any sign, any nakshatra, Saturn at its best, why don't we talk about this? Saturn at its best, it will destroy the imperfections of every nakshatra and refine it to perfection. But Saturn at its worst will literally just destroy all the significations of the nakshatra. This operates different from Jupiter. Jupiter at its best will increase all the positive significations of a nakshatra. But Jupiter at its worst will increase all the significations, including good and bad. Including good and bad. One of the problems with Ardras is that Ardras can be too overcritical. They can notice too many flaws. They can focus too much on other people and forget about themselves. You know what I mean? And they can get really irritated and really frustrated at other people. And one of the things about Ardras, at their worst, they give destructive criticism. Like the kind of criticism that like, oh, this person's not trying to help me. This person's just trying to humiliate me and make me feel bad about myself. But if you have Saturn in Ardra would usually, at its best, it would study how to best go about Ardra significations in the most perfected way. It would remove all of the ugliness of Ardra and only preserve the good, refining it. And so instead of an Ardra placement, like somebody who just randomly has Sun, Moon, or Ascendant in Ardra badly placed, it would be much more inclined to those ugly expressions. But someone who has Saturn Ardra would be much more constructively critical. They would notice your flaws and would say, oh, listen, you have this mistake over here, this mistake over there. Here, why don't you go about it this way? Perfect yourself this way. Let me help you go about it this way. And so Saturn would remove all of the imperfections of Ardra. I don't do synastry too much. I have noticed that with some of I have different friend groups, of course. Like, I have this older friend group, like we go to the gym together, and we have a lot of like Saturn synastry as well. But our friendships are not exactly equal because like they're a lot older than me, and so it's like the relationship is like they give me advice, they tell me how to train better at the gym. They just overall just give me advice, yeah. You're welcome. Saturn in Punarvasu. Well, let's think about this a little bit. Saturn in Punarvasu would be less inclined to making mistakes to begin with. And so the whole second chances significations would apply a little bit less. It would be different from Jupiter in Punarvasu. Jupiter in Punarvasu would experiment a lot, would do a lot of crazy stuff, and then would get a lot of new chances. So there's that. Yeah. So there's that as well. Let me see something. Oh, guys, by the way, since we're here, check out not only my YouTube, but also my Patreon. What's my Patreon's name? This is my Patreon's name. Please support me on Patreon. Check out my Patreon if you guys like my stuff. I'm constantly writing articles and things like that. 193 articles this far. I want to start uploading videos as well. I have to figure out how to do that. Anyway. Jupiter in Pusha is an awesome placement because Pusha is already a perfecting nakshatra, and so Jupiter, when it enters there, it just increases all of those significations. You know, Sati Sati is such an interesting concept. You want to know why? Not everybody suffers in Sati Sati. I have to say, when I went through my Sati Sati, it had to be one of the best times in my life, to be honest. I need to understand Sati Sati better, to be honest. But I think Sati Sati affects you differently depending on your overall karmas and things like that. Because I know people who, well, listen, their character isn't exactly the most perfect character. And when they were going through their Sade Sate, whoa, it was awful. It was awful. But for me, it was great. I can talk about Saturn Dashas though. Saturn Dashas for me, and Saturn Dashas, as far as I've studied them, those can be quite difficult. So here's the thing about Dashas, what astrologers often say. Depending on the Dasha that you're running, you become that planet. So let's say you're going through a Saturn Dasha. If you're going through a Saturn Dasha, you become Saturn. You gain Saturn's disposition. You become lazier. You become more self-critical. You become more pessimistic. When you enter into your Mercury Dasha, you become Mercury. What else do astrologers often say? They often say that depending on the Dasha planet that you're in, make that Dasha planet your ascendant, and then you read the chart from there, and then you make predictions from there. So you don't do that for Sadisati. You don't do that for Sadisati. We're mostly just going to be focusing on Saturn here. We're mostly just going to be focusing on Saturn. Any questions on Saturn? If sometimes I'll comment on Jupiter just like for comparison, but yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Rahu or Ketu conjunct Saturn in the night. Okay, interesting. Could you please explain this better, baby row 9? I'm not sure if I understand the question. I understand. Saturn dashas can be quite difficult. Saturn dashas can be quite difficult.
Can I greet your followers? Maybe they'll like my voice too.
Yes, also put your Antardasha planet as your ascendant. Also your Antardasha planet. I am also excited for Pusha Jupiter transit. I'm expecting a lot of wonderful things. I'm expecting a lot of wonderful things to happen. Oh, that's what you meant, Baby Row. Oh, okay. I'm trying to think about that right now. I'm trying to think about that. I can't come up with an answer, to be honest, right now. I can't come up with an answer. Guys, any more questions about Saturn? Or can we wrap this up? Any thoughts on the Saturn ruled nakshatras? Oh, that's such a general question. Such a general question. All right, let me just share like a random thought about Saturn ruled nakshatras. You know something about Saturn ruled nakshatras? They can be the sort of people to think that they a lot of times they can be the sort of people to think that the world would be a much better place if I were in charge. They can think like that. They're the type of people that like they can see everybody around them as so incompetent that they can tell themselves, "Man, I need to be boss. I need to be boss in order for things to work right." And so because of that, they can have a lot of usurping tendencies where like they start to, I don't want to say plot and scheme, but maybe I do want to say plot and scheme. Plot and scheme to become the top of the hierarchy so that officially everybody is forced to obey them. Because Saturn nakshatras can really dislike the way that things are done. They can see incompetence everywhere and they can convince themselves and they can be quite arrogant in convincing themselves that only they can correct things and put things in order. And so they can become very obsessed with control and controlling other people. It's one of those reasons why Uttara Bhadabhada is also related to like Uttara Bhadabhada is related to world domination. It's related to the sort of villains in movies and TV that want to dominate the world to control it because they believe that they're the ones who can put the world in order. And it's also the reasons why Saturn nakshatras are also related to secret societies that control the world because they're convinced that they're the ones who can put the world in order. So yeah, those are just random thoughts that I just had. Any remedies for strong Saturn or mantras? Why don't you check out my video on Kali? because the mantra of Mother Kali refines and perfects Saturn. So you should check out that video. My videos on Goddess Kali. I'm not sure if you've watched it, but yeah. But yeah, that. Something else that can really help is try to constantly overcome yourself because Saturn is a planet that is strengthened through overcoming itself. Set an alarm. Do something very basic. Set an alarm every day on what time to wake up and make sure to always wake up at that time. Tell yourself that you're not going to eat a certain food and stick to that promise. Like, observe what are your flaws right now, the flaws that you recognize in yourself, the flaws that other people do, and put yourself on a mission to overcome yourself. You're going to strengthen your Saturn if you do that. You're going to gain muscle. If you're feeling too much restriction, you should probably go check out my videos on Mother Kali as well. But probably you've watched it, Galactic Blueprint. You probably watched it. Yes, Saturn also does rule over muscle. In what way it represents muscle? Well, simple. Since Saturn is a planet that's constantly trying to overcome itself, listen, you gain muscles, don't you? Oh, you did watch that video. I scared you. Oh, oh, I scared you. I'm so sorry for scaring you. I'm so sorry for scaring you. Oh, I'm so sorry, Galactic Blueprint. You fell sick after doing the Dream mantra. Ah, wait, the Dream or the Cream? Which one? Oh wow, these mantras are so powerful. I literally feel like like just by speaking those mantras just once, I feel a change in me. It's crazy. Yes, I will start. The next series is going to be Mars. The next series is going to be Mars. Uh, let's see. Let's see. David Frawley. So, if you guys want to learn about the goddesses, one of the various books that I would recommend is David Frawley's book. So, let me go on the part where he's talking about Mother Gully, page 64. Where's that? All right, so here's the thing. Here's something that is very interesting that is often said about mantras. They say that, like, one word mantras tend to be much more powerful than multiple word mantras. And so if you only say Dream, which is Kali's mantra, it is much more powerful. But if you say a whole host of mantras to go along with that, it's oftentimes less intense. Let me actually just read a little bit of what he's saying here. These are one of those books that I read and I reread and I reread and I reread and I reread among the various ones. So yeah, I mean, if the one word syllable cream is too much, You could try the multiple. You could try one of the various. These aren't even all of Kali's mantras, actually. These aren't even all of Kali's mantras because you can go to certain websites like Kali mantras. And also, depending on your chart, you probably the raw Kali mantra cream is probably not the best for you. So let me try to look for uh, a more pleasant, less extreme. Oh, you could try the Shri Smashan Kali mantra, but of course you have to check your birth chart and you have to check your planets to see which to see if this mantra is appropriate for you. Notice that in this mantra, that very aggressive Krim does not exist. Instead, it's Aim, which is Matangi's mantra, Hrim, which is Bhunavishwari's mantra, Shrim, which is Kali's mantra, Klim, which is Lalita's mantra, then Kalike, which is uh, Kali's name. And so this mantra is much more pleasant. It's much more pleasant, but it's still a Kali mantra, and so it can give you many of those Kali qualities of relaxing and releasing, but to a much softer degree. You know what I mean? And this mantra is also very good for because it contains Mercury's energies, Moon's energies, Venus's energies, etc. And so this is the one of the calmest ones in this list. What else is a calm one? What else is a calm one? This one is pretty aggressive. Which else is a calm one? Actually, I think that's the calmest one that there is here, to be honest. Aditya, wow. Okay, basically that. But also Saturn the second also does that. Oh, interesting. No, I focus on Ashwini because you see, anytime I do like one of those longer nakshatra videos on my Patreon, I do all the planets, all the 9 planets through the nakshatra. And so I've already done 9 planets through Mrigashira, 9 planets through Uttara Palguni, 9 planets through Vishaka, 9 planets through various other nakshatras. It just so happens that you saw Ashwini because it was the most recent one. Yes, Stream works for that. Stream, no. And yes, yeah, I agree with the whole Shravan and Rohini being men. If you want to bulk up or looks bigger, Shreem is definitely a good one. It'll make you look bigger. It'll just basically make you look. Overall, Shreem is the beauty nakshatra. Overall, there are various other nakshatras that you can modify to make them like make you more attractive, but the specific beauty mantra is Shreem. Although for a man, it can make you look a little soft and it can make you look a little feminine. And so it can technically make you more beautiful, more handsome, but being more handsome, being more beautiful, being more pretty does not always necessarily make a person more attractive, you know. A lot of men are a little bit more attractive if they're a little bit rougher, you know. The Shri mantra does not make you look rough. It makes you look soft. It makes you look a little too soft. But I mean, if you're into that softness, then that's perfectly fine. Oh, that's very interesting, Aditya, the story that you're sharing about Kali. The benefits of this beauty ritual, which already passed, the messages that I got from the goddess was glow and gloss. That is something that she blessed this group with, glow and gloss. Lam is a good, you know something, the Lam mantra is also a good mantra for beauty. It's also a good mantra for beauty. Yeah, it makes you heavier as well because the Lam mantra relates to the Muladhara chakra, and you know the Muladhara chakra is also the chakra that it relates a lot to survival. You see what I mean? Those with a strong Muladhara chakra are those who have survived and have conquered over the material plane. You've conquered over hunger. You've conquered over poverty. And what is the natural consequence of conquering poverty and hunger? Beauty is usually one of those natural consequences, you know. So yeah, it did go amazing. Thank you so much, Galactic Blueprint. Moon men do radiate stream a lot. They ought to. It is the moon's mantra. Yeah, chakra mantras tend to be a lot softer in their effects. I'm sure it did have an effect on you, Galactic Blueprint, but you're not going to expect the same dramatic effects as though you were chanting a goddess mantra like Kali or Tara or Tara. You know, those mantras, they're Shakti mantras. I mean, they're aggressive. You're going to see those effects. But that doesn't mean that the Lam mantra was not having an effect on you. It was. It's just more delicate. That's all. I did a Lakshmi, but you want to know something? I will also do Dumavati specifically, but that's in the future. Ooh, Solar Returns. I'm not sure what I think about that. I'm not sure what you're saying over here now. I'm not sure what you're saying. Oh, guys, this has been a very, very lovely live stream. I'm so happy to be back here with you guys. When will be the next live? I don't know, maybe in a week, maybe less. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, Lola. All right, I am ending this stream. I am officially ending this stream. You guys, God bless you all. Thank you guys so much.